Benito did not grow up surrounded by luxury. His childhood unfolded in simple spaces, predictable routines, days that seemed to repeat endlessly. Nothing was missing in an obvious way, but nothing overflowed either. From an early age, he learned to observe the world before trying to take part in it. While other children ran without thinking, Benito stopped, watched, noticed. He paid attention to things most people ignored, the tone adults used when they were tired, the silence that followed certain conversations, the expressions people wore when they thought no one was looking. This constant awareness was not a choice, it was instinct. At school, he sat quietly and listened. He wasn't disruptive, but he wasn't fully present either. He wasn't openly rejected, yet he was never truly included. It was as if he always stood slightly outside the frame, close enough to see everything, but not close enough to belong. And that created a strange feeling, existing without fully arriving. Paused children feel more than they can explain. And Benito felt everything. There were moments when he tried to blend in, laughing when others laughed, pretending to understand jokes that didn't make sense to him. But inside, something remained distant. Not because he believed he was better, but because something inside him moved differently. And when a child realizes they are different, they begin to wonder if something is wrong with them. At home, life followed a quiet rhythm. Simple routines, long moments of silence. Benito spent a lot of time alone, not because he was abandoned, but because solitude became familiar. He learned how to fill time with thoughts, with imagination, with small ideas that appeared without warning. In those silent spaces, his inner world began to expand. While other children searched for distraction, Benito searched for meaning. He watched adults closely, trying to understand the weight they carried. He noticed frustration hidden behind smiles, fatigue disguised as responsibility. Even without fully understanding it, he felt the gravity of everyday life, and that awareness made him more introspective, more cautious, more alert. Childhood is often described as light and carefree. But for some, it is simply the first encounter with displacement. Benito learned early that he would not be loud, he would not command attention, and instead of fighting that reality, he adapted. Adaptation sometimes is a quiet form of survival. There were days when he stared at the sky for long stretches of time, days when he walked slowly, even without a destination. From the outside, these moments looked empty, but internally, something was forming. A deep relationship with his inner life. Being an observant child has a cost. You understand things too early. You feel things too deeply. But it also develops something rare, the ability to listen to what is never said out loud. That ability would follow Benito for the rest of his life. Without realizing it, he was learning how to turn silence into language, into expression, into something that could one day be shared. But it wasn't time yet. At that moment, all he had was the constant feeling of being different and the quiet determination to keep existing in a world that didn't quite feel like his. Pause to 4 seconds. Benito's childhood was not marked by dramatic events. It was shaped by small emotions, repeated over time, and often, those are the feelings that shape everything. Adolescence did not arrive gently. It arrived with expectations. Suddenly the world wanted answers. Who were you supposed to be? How should you look? What do you like? Where do you fit? For many, these questions are confusing. For Benito, they were suffocating. Until then, being different had been a quiet feeling. something internal, something unnamed. Now difference had a shape, a sound, an opinion. It was noticed. Pause, the way he spoke, the way he moved, the way he expressed himself. Everything seemed slightly off script. At school, the atmosphere shifted. No open hostility. No dramatic confrontations. Just looks. Looks that measure, compare, judge without words. Benito noticed them. He always did. And each look added a little more weight to something he was already carrying. Adolescence is unforgiving to those who hesitate. It rewards certainty, punishes ambiguity. If you don't define yourself fast enough, others will do it for you, and rarely with kindness. There were days when Benito tried to adjust. He softened parts of himself, muted certain reactions, hid preferences, not because he wanted to lie, but because he was tired of standing out. There is a specific exhaustion that comes from being different every day, not dramatic, just constant. Comparison became unavoidable. Other teenagers seemed comfortable in their skin, confident, sure of where they belonged. Benito wasn't. And slowly, uncertainty turned into insecurity. Questions began looping in his mind. Why does this feel easy for them? Why do I overthink everything? Why can't I just blend in? These questions didn't demand answers, they simply repeated. On the way home, in his room, late at night. It was during this time that silence changed its role. Before, silence was neutral. Now, it became shelter. Benito spent more time alone. Not because he was pushed away, but because isolation hurt less than constant self-correction. And inside that isolation, something began to take shape. Music. Not as ambition, not as a plan, but as emotional survival. Music didn't ask him to explain himself. It didn't require him to perform socially. It didn't judge. It simply existed, and allowed him to exist alongside it. He listened deeply, not casually. Lyrics seemed to articulate emotions he couldn't put into words. Rhythms gave structure to feelings that felt chaotic. Music organized what life had scattered. Eventually, listening was no longer enough. He felt the urge to create, not for an audience, not for recognition, but to release pressure. Creation became conversation, not with the world, but with himself. This process was private, almost secret. There was no vision of success, no idea of sharing it publicly. It was raw, unfiltered, honest. While others sought external validation, Benito was building an inner world. That world was intense, sensitive, contradictory, and sometimes overwhelming. Adolescence also brought conflict with expectations, with norms, with images of what a young man should be. Benito felt he was failing those expectations, and that failure bred guilt. Guilt for not fitting in, guilt for feeling unsatisfied, guilt for wanting something undefined. It's hard to chase a future when you don't yet have the language to describe it. There were moments when he considered erasing parts of himself, becoming quieter, less expressive, less complicated, just to fit. Paused for 4 seconds, but something inside resisted. Even tired, even insecure, even confused. He could not fully abandon who he was. That resistance, quiet, persistent, began shaping his character. Benito's adolescence was not marked by rebellion. It was marked by internal battles, and often those are the hardest ones to survive. By the end of this phase, he still had no clear answers. No concrete plan. No guarantees. But he had something essential, an identity forming, fragile but real. And he had music, not as a solution, but as companionship. He didn't know it yet, but the thing helping him survive emotionally would one day help millions of others feel less alone. For now, though, he was just a young man trying to endure a phase that felt endless. Adulthood didn't arrive with clarity. It arrived quietly. One day, Benaya was no longer seen as a confused teenager. He was simply another adult trying to get by. The questions changed. It was no longer, "What do you want to be?" It became, "What are you doing with your life?" Routine took control in subtle but relentless ways. Schedules, bills, responsibilities. Benito began working at a supermarket. An ordinary job, necessary, honest. There was nothing wrong with it. And yet, everything inside him felt misaligned. The aisles were long, the shelves always the same. Time seemed to stretch endlessly. Hours passed without meaning, days repeated without distinction, and slowly a quiet fear began to grow, that life was moving forward, and he was standing still. He watched customers come and go, faces tired, minds elsewhere, everyone carrying invisible weight. And sometimes, between tasks, a thought surfaced, uninvited and uncomfortable. Is this it? Pause. That question rarely arrives alone. It brings guilt, comparison, anxiety. Friends seemed to be advancing. Some were studying, others had careers, direction, momentum. Meanwhile, Benito clocked in, stocked shelves, finished shifts. There was no shame in the work, but the feeling of being late was real. Some nights, exhaustion was physical, feet aching, back stiff, but the heavier fatigue lived in his mind. The fatigue of imagining a future that refused to take shape. This is a specific kind of doubt, adult doubt, not impulsive, not dramatic, persistent, the doubt that asks quietly, what if nothing changes? Still, he continued, woke up, showed up, did what needed to be done, because adulthood doesn't pause while dreams figure themselves out. But there was another shift, one that existed outside working hours, a shift no one saw. When the day ended, when the city slowed, when silence returned, Benito created, in a small room, with simple equipment. No professional setup, no safety net. Music didn't pay the bills, it didn't offer stability, but it offered meaning. Creating after a full workday required discipline, required belief, required energy he often didn't have. There were nights he sat in front of the screen, too tired to begin, too restless to stop. Doubt was constant, not just doubt about success, but doubt about legitimacy. Was this just a hobby? Was he being unrealistic? Was it time to let go? Dreams become heavier when they stop feeling young, when time passes and progress feels invisible. He uploaded music without expectation. Sometimes no one listened, and that silence hurt, not sharply, but repeatedly. A dull ache that didn't fade. There were moments when he considered giving it up completely, not dramatically, just quietly, accepting reality, settling. That temptation didn't come from failure. It came from fatigue. Yet something held him back. Not confidence, not certainty. Something quieter. The sense that abandoning this would mean losing a part of himself he wouldn't get back. Invisible adulthood is dangerous, because there is no applause, no criticism, no feedback. No one is watching. And it is in that anonymity that many dreams disappear. Benito survived this phase not because he believed wholeheartedly, but because stopping felt worse than continuing. Paused to 5 seconds, he didn't know if it would work. He didn't know if anyone would care. He didn't know if it was worth the sacrifice. But he knew this: giving up would hurt more than trying one more night. So he kept going, night after night, without promises, without guarantees, feeding something fragile, unstable, but honest. Without realizing it, he was preparing himself for the moment when the world would finally cross his path. But that moment had not arrived yet. Nothing happened all at once. There was no announcement, no dramatic turning point, no moment that clearly separated before from after. The day began the same way all the others had. Benito woke up tired, moved through routine, carried the same doubts. The difference was invisible but irreversible. For a long time, his music had existed like messages thrown into the ocean. Uploaded, released, forgotten. Most of the time, the ocean stayed silent. But then, something shifted. A notification appeared, then another, then a few more. Not overwhelming, not spectacular, just enough to feel strange. Benito stared at the screen longer than necessary. Because when you spend years unseen, attention feels unfamiliar, almost suspicious. He reread comments carefully, listened again to his own songs. Nothing had changed. Same voice, same rawness, same imperfections, and yet, someone had heard something. The accident rarely looks like opportunity. Most of the time, it looks like confusion. Benito didn't feel excitement. He felt fear. Fear of believing too soon. Fear of imagining a future that might collapse again. Fear of allowing hope back into a place where disappointment had lived for so long. The attention grew slowly. Not fame, not recognition, curiosity. And curiosity was already more than he was used to. There was a tension inside him he couldn't explain. Part of him felt validated. Another part felt exposed. Because being seen after years of invisibility can feel just as destabilizing as being ignored. Music had always been a shelter. Now it was becoming a bridge. A bridge between his inner world and a world he didn't control. Something else changed as well. People didn't just listen, they related. They saw themselves in the uncertainty, in the vulnerability, in the honesty. And that realization created weight. Until then, he had created to survive emotionally. Now, others were leaning on that same expression. And suddenly, the music wasn't just his anymore. The shift didn't fix his life overnight. It didn't erase the supermarket job. It didn't remove the exhaustion. It only opened a small crack. A possibility. But possibility comes with questions. What if this grows too fast? What if I'm not ready? What if I lose control? Because success doesn't wait for comfort. Begins moving before you fully understand it. And once it moves, it doesn't stop easily. Benito noticed his routine starting to fracture. Music demanded more time, more attention, more decisions. The job that once defined his days began to feel temporary, and that realization was terrifying. Choosing one path meant risking another. And he had lived long enough without safety nets to understand what that risk meant. There were nights when he sat in front of his screen, hands still, heart racing. Not from excitement, but from uncertainty, because he was staring at a future without instructions. The accident didn't turn him into a star. It simply removed the illusion that nothing would ever change. And sometimes, that realization is more destabilizing than failure. Pause to 5 seconds. The whisper was becoming noise. And slowly, the world was beginning to listen. But listening is not the same as understanding. And the next phase would demand something harder than surviving silence, learning how to live with noise. The noise arrived before Benito had time to adjust. At first, it was attention, then expectation, then demand. What once felt like curiosity became pressure. People wanted more music, more presence, more answers. And the silence that had shaped him began to disappear. Fame doesn't enter slowly. It occupies space, schedules filled, messages multiplied, decisions became urgent. Benito felt his life being reorganized by forces outside his control. Opinions came from everywhere, some praising, some cruel, all of them loud. On stage there was light, applause, validation, but off stage there was isolation. Because the more people believe they know you, the fewer truly do. He began to realize something unsettling. The world wasn't interested in the man. It was interested in the symbol, and symbols don't get rest. Pressure seeped into everything. The creative process, relationships, self-perception. What once felt like free expression now carried expectation. You have to deliver. You can't disappoint. You represent something bigger now. Representing millions is heavy, especially when you are still learning who you are. Benito feared losing himself, becoming a version shaped by demand, forgetting the quiet truth that had sustained him. There were nights in unfamiliar hotel rooms where silence returned, but not as refuge. Now it came with exhaustion, the kind of silence that doesn't restore, it only reminds. Success doesn't erase doubt, it changes the questions. Before it was, will anyone listen? Now it was, am I still me? Fame is an invisible contract. It offers everything you once wanted, and asks for things you never planned to give. Privacy, spontaneity, simplicity, sometimes peace. Still, Benito chose to continue, not because it was easy, but because turning back would also have a cost. And he had already learned how to live with invisible prices. Benito's story was never just about winning, it was about endurance. Enduring silence, enduring invisibility, and later enduring excess. Few people survive all three without losing themselves. Success didn't change who he was. It exposed what had always been there. Sensitivity, intensity, honesty. But honesty is expensive. It demands courage, especially when conformity would be easier. Benito learned that no victory comes without marks. Every path leaves scars, some visible, some permanent. And maybe they shouldn't fade, because scars remember what applause forgets. The boy who once watched the world quietly still exists. He has simply learned to live with the fact that now the world watches back. This was never a story about fame. It was a story about identity, about remaining yourself when everything tries to reshape you. If you're listening to this from a place of silence, or from a place that's too loud, the question is the same. Who do you choose to be when no one is telling you how?